You're listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Man, it's the pure from my optics. I'm feeling it, making a killing, feeling it filling up my pockets. Masculine like Paul Potts for the profit. No religious affiliation, man, stop it. Half tall, grey, half monstrous. How you gonna stop this? I don't need to clock cuts once I drop this in the stove. And I want the slogan, you wanna did it in my flow. You look a little timid as I sit and scribble notes and alchemist.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Tigers SRD dentro de Deporte Radio de Detroit. Soy Rogelio Castillo, conmigo Chris Brown y Brandon Day. And all right, so I just to throw people off, I'll explain the Spanish a little later. But anyway, tonight we have a special guest all the way from the United Kingdom, and he's been a big one of the best tweets, one of the best Twitter follows you can find out there. Keeps it real, and I missed his quotes where he was randomly quoting and had a player underneath it. Tigers JUK Jed, welcome in, Jed.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And so before we get started, Chris, go ahead with your question.
Oh, the old chestnut. Well,
yeah.
I always like to ask people how they first got into baseball, and that seems particularly interesting to me in this case, Jed, because you're from the UK. So I'm curious how you got into baseball and how you got into the Tigers.
Well, I just used to sit up late, basically, when I was at school, and I come across the 2006 World Series on TV. So I didn't really know anything about it all, but I ended up watching, I think, Game 2 Game 2 was the first game I watched. And then I realised that, obviously, if the Tigers came back, the series would go on longer. So I ended up rooting for them, and then it just went from there. Then the next season, I followed along again.
Well, interesting. 2006, you're not alone in that. I think there were a lot of local fans who kind of hopped on board in 2006. Game 2, that was the Kenny Rogers game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and after that, I didn't even know that it was like a series or anything. I thought maybe that was it over. Then it was on again the next night, and then ended up watching every game.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Look at that. And they told us TV was bad for us.
So
2006 kind of brought me back, actually, as well. I mean, I was a pretty intransigent Tigers fan during the latter half of the 90s, and kind of came back around when Alan Trammell took over, but wasn't really fully on board until I saw Verlander pitching like early in the spring that year, and was like, oh man, they might have something finally. And then I was just as shocked as everyone that it went that far. But
for 2006, for me, it did catch me off guard. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, I was watching terrible baseball from '89 on. So I mean, it was one of those things when 2006 happened. I cried. I literally cried when Maglow hit that home run, and that's the Oakland series. Sorry, but that I did have a moment. Either way, when they got to the World Series, I had moments each and every time. So
yeah.
So but at any rate, yeah, I'm a little bit messy with my time. But so let's start with looking at the cuts for the Tigers as the first round, or pretty much a lot of the major of the cuts came down. A couple of interesting comments came out of it, too. Notable Ryan Carpenter, who had a really good spring. Michael Gerber, also fantastic spring. Everybody loves Michael Gerber, and he looks like he was, you knew he was going to start in AAA because of what's going on in center field with Victor Reyes, and Jacoby Jones having a really good spring. Carpenter in 4 appearances, 3 runs with 12 strikeouts in 9 2/3 innings. Kind of myth why he's going back, but, I mean, this guy... The physiology, as Brandon coined a phrase, looked like it was already working on him. And look at the starting pitchers left in camp. So he'll be the top guy in AAA, looks like. Grayson Garinger going back to Toledo. Baez, Sergio Alcantara. And he got quite a bit of time, too. And Genemez went back to High A Lakeland. So I'm interested to see in that. But the one guy that went back, got a couple comments about from Ron Gardenhire, was Jake Rogers. And Brandon, I'll start with you on this in terms of him showing too much flash, and I don't understand what he meant by that. And this guy, Jake Rogers, good frame rate, has been able to establish himself as a really good defensive catcher. Was the comment really necessary?
I mean, they certainly weren't necessary to kind of put that out there publicly, unless unless it was just a way of like deflecting any criticism for not just bringing Jake Rogers up because he. I mean, all spring it's been pretty apparent that's the best defensive catcher probably in the Tigers organization already. I mean, he looked really good. I don't know if anybody saw the outing that Joe Jimenez had. Maybe like when was that? I think it was Sunday. Watching Jake Rogers lead Joe Jimenez through a 3 strikeout inning, he just looked outstanding back there. And I mean, I've expected this, from the minute they hired Gardy, but Ron Gardenhire is of the old school. Obviously, he's a guy who's definitely going to defer to veterans. He's going to be maybe a little bit more vocally critical of younger players and kind of drive them. Whether you think that's the way to go about it or not, he's kind of going to be that guy. The comments himself, I kind of thought that was a little bit over the top. Like, he's had a really nice spring, and there didn't seem to be any need to say anything about that. And we'll see if he has any similar words for Jose Iglesias, but somehow I doubt it, because Jose Iglesias has played in the league for a while. So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was some nonsense. Whatever. He also said, that he really likes Jake Rogers. That they'd had good conversations. But yeah, he wants to get rid of some of the style and profile stuff and get him back to basics. So, I would have Jake Rogers teaching James McCann right now. So I don't really know what he's getting at here.
Well, in the one article I read, he specifically mentioned an instance when Rogers threw the ball back to the pitcher by throwing it over the batter.
Yeah,
like the batter was in the batter's box and he lofted it over his head, and that, so for some reason, that was he didn't like that because it could hit the batter or hit the bat and get away and stuff like that. And I was like, well, okay, that makes a little bit of sense, but still, I think your point about making it public is odd. But maybe they feel like, they do that and you put him on blast a little bit or whatever, and maybe he'll straighten up. But I don't know. I think it's probably a minor issue in the long run, hopefully, unless he's an asshole.
Yeah, it just seemed like one of those things where you kind of put the you just sort of put the player out there, like, there's still something they have to work on. Like, it's part of the methodology of, like, moving guys through your system maybe more quickly than some people think they will, because they're gonna stumble, and if there's things you want them to work on, sometimes you need to make them stumble before you can kind of get through to them. I don't know, it might be something like that, but yeah, I don't know. It seemed unnecessary, but Jake Rogers is going to be here before too long anyway, so whatever.
Yeah.
What about you, Jed? I mean, in terms of, we've talked about this on Twitter before about James McCann, and I'm sure you have strong feelings for it. But for Jake Rogers, I mean, in terms of even catching wise, what's your thoughts about this?
Well, all he has to do essentially is be able to hit right-handed pitching better than a double-A player to beat. With his defense already seems. I've only seen him twice this spring, and already he looked more comfortable back there than James McCann in most of his outings. So I don't know. As long as he can hit, he doesn't even really need to hit if he's good back there. So
yeah, he can just draw some walks.
He's going to turn into, I guess, a platoon facing lefties. Only maybe if Rogers comes up to the end at the end. Maybe they'll keep him till next year.
And while we're talking about catchers, I might as well mention the new one of the new StatCast stats they released last Friday, I think it was. They're doing catcher pop time now, which is something that scouts have been doing forever, but now they're doing it with StatCast, so it should be a little bit more accurate. And McCann, turns out, he actually has one of the strongest throwing arms, but his pop times are just average.
Yeah,
he doesn't have. They break it down by miles per hour and by what do they call it, transfer and release or whatever.
Yeah,
and so his is below average, so it balances out. And so there you go. I mean, his calling card has always kind of been his arm, and it's just average. So that's what we've got with James McCann.
Yeah, and he's never really been great framing wise either.
No, he's been one of the worst.
And I wouldn't really rate his pitch calling either. It's kind of hard with the staff we've had last year, but I don't know.
Yeah, you always figure. I mean, framing must be affected by pitching. I mean, I don't see any way that it can't be. But he's graded out basically as the worst full-time catcher, I think, in the major leagues as a framer. Multiple seasons, maybe all 3 seasons, or very close to it. So yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of know what we've got back there. And what is it, Chris? Is it like it's 2 seconds is basically average, right, to catch and release?
Yeah, that's 2 seconds is considered like a 50 grade catching arm.
Yeah.
Although from that scale, you don't really ever see anything below like 2.1. That's like a 30 or 20 grade. But like the elite catchers will go 1.8. That's like Pudge Rodriguez time.
Yeah.
And I did I tweeted out that I had Rogers on one throw. I had him, the one that there was, kind of a highlight. You could see he was quite pleased with himself. I had him at like 186, but on the replay I kept trying. It was more like 195, but still it was a plus throw.
There we go.
And by the way, wasn't there was a catcher for San Diego who had the best pop time, correct?
Yeah,
Austin Hedges. Yeah,
Austin Hedges. Yeah,
that's been his defense has been his calling card since he was in the low, basically since the draft. Like that was the one thing everybody knew about him, is he was going to be a legit defender, and it's come to pass.
So yeah, it in terms of even like these new stats, and it seems like it adds an added value to this too. But it's all, another one that stood up there was Carlos Perez, is another guy who's up there for pop rate too. But then again, you look at the Yankees, and I don't think they really care about Gary Sanchez's pop rate at all. So
no, well, I think he has the strongest arm, but he's not a great transfer. But again, if he's going to hit 35 or 40 home runs, they don't care, and I wouldn't either, honestly.
No.
Yeah, but at any rate, we move on. We talk about catchers have the battery mate, so we move on to pitching a little bit. We talk about today, the Tigers really, in terms of what they've been seeing from steampunk legend Mike Fivers this spring so far, has been very disappointing. And he went out there, and there was and I saw this today on Twitter, that his miles per hour was kind of down a little bit. I think Chris, you were tweeting out earlier that it was down a couple of miles. Like I think it was going 89, 90 instead of 92, 94, and he. He hasn't pitched well this spring. The Tigers lost to the Braves on 8-1 on Thursday, and gave in 4 innings, 67 pitches and 47 strikes. And Acuna had a long bomb on him earlier. And of course, the veteran, in terms of what Hart is saying, he's just misfiring a little, and they're going to keep giving him more than, perhaps Norris this time around. But still, he doesn't look good. I'm really kind of, I thought the Tigers would go after perhaps another pitcher out there. I mean, granted, I know they understand what they just signed with Francisco.
Liriano.
Yeah, Liriano. So, but you expected another right-hander. But today's game, and also itself too, Jimenez got lit up again. 2-run homer by Danny Santana. Although those were the first 2 home runs off Jimenez, so that's promising. But again, who would step in right now? If you look at this rotation right now, if Norris is going to go back and get a AAA, it sounds like he's going back to Toledo by all counts, and you're going to go with 2 lefties. If Fivers gets cut, who are they going to bring in? I mean, I'll start with Chris on this. Is there any? Will they go to Ryan? They're just going to go with Ryan Carpenter and then just go with 3 lefties, or?
I think so. I think you mentioned Carpenter. He looked solid this spring. I think the Liriano signing is basically what sent him back to Toledo. And Fires, did Fires get a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal? I think it was a 1-year deal, right?
It's 1, I think. Yeah, 1 for $6 million.
I think he might have team control, though. I think maybe next year, because he's never hit free agency.
Yeah. So I could see them. I mean, basically with Fires and Liriano, I think they're doing what I wanted them to do, was to go get a cheap veteran arm and hope you catch some lightning in a bottle and flip them at the deadline for something. But my guess is if Fires is pitching like this into like June, they'll probably just part ways with him, and then it'll be Carpenter or Norris. It is kind of strange what they're doing with Norris, but I sort of understand it. I think he might need to toughen up a little bit, if that makes any sense. I don't know, but yeah. We may see them bring up another. I mean, they still have Artie Lewicki. They've got Spencer Turnbull they can turn to. There are arms out there, and we'll probably see them all.
What about you, Brandon? Before we get to there's a lot of the roster still set at 37, so position battles we'll get to in a second. But what about you? What have you seen from him that makes you think there's any type of optimism at all with his arm?
As far as Fires?
Yeah.
I'm not really seeing anything that I'm real optimistic about so far. I like that signing, because Mike Fivers, especially before he got to Houston, was much more of like a overhand 4-seam curveball changeup guy, and the Astros kind of tried to turn him into more of a sinker baller, which is understandable if you're trying to get more out of him than maybe he's even got, the capacity to give you. But, he seems to have kind of gone back to that overhand delivery, did late last year as well. And he kind of fits a little bit as far as a guy that you would bring in and have him play at Comerica Park, because maybe he gives up a few less home runs and all of a sudden you've got yourself a league average pitcher. He's always had a pretty solid strikeout rate, pretty close to a batter per inning. The walks can get a little out of hand at times, but never terrible, really. So, he made sense from that perspective, but, this has just been a really odd offseason, and in retrospect, and this is total hindsight, this isn't a criticism of Alavila, but, you obviously could have waited longer now and probably picked up a better pitcher. I don't know if a guy like Lance Lynn or Alex Cobb is even going to come here, like almost no matter what you offered him, but there've been some guys who've been available and they could have picked them up instead. They kind of pounced on Fears pretty early. Obviously, because, Chris Bosio used to be his pitching coach in Milwaukee. That reunion makes sense. It's still spring training. Some guys take longer to loosen up and get it going. He's not young anymore. He's 31, I believe. So I'm not necessarily giving up on him right away or anything like that. But yeah, I would keep the leash pretty short, because he's not earning that much money. And the Tigers shouldn't really be, the Tigers have enough young players where it's fine to bring in a veteran to kind of fill a gap and give you some insurance. But if your younger players are doing well, you do need to kind of punt those guys out of the way unless they're really overperforming. If Mike Fiers is blocking Daniel Norris, for more than a month, I'm going to be in an absolute froth. I promise. So, I don't mind, moving Daniel Norris to the bullpen for a while. That's something that, I think Chris Bosio is interested in, and there've been some other teams that have had success doing that, letting a guy kind of find his footing, just going out there and just dominating for an inning without having to kind of sit in the dugout between innings and kind of stew, which is where I think Daniel Norris probably kind of goes wrong. He's just a little bit too maybe analytical and intense and emotional about it for his own good, and kind of, so I can see the utility to putting him in the bullpen to start the year. If they put him with the Mud Hens, to me that's just a terrible idea. He's proven that he can handle major league hitters already. I don't see what he's going to really learn, pitching 5-6 innings against AAA guys. I'd rather see him in the bullpen with the Tigers, and I'm going to assume that's what they're going to do, and have Carpenter as kind of their sixth man up for the rotation.
No, it makes sense to me. I think Norris out of the bullpen should be the right choice, and also I think it would add to a possible long reliever if Fiers does get lit up. Jed, what do you think?
I don't really see the point of moving Norris back to AAA at this point. I prefer him to be starting. I don't really see, we're not trying to win, so you might as well see what you have there. He's been, this is his third year. This is his third year with us now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. He's never looked really bad. He's never looked. Certain starts he looks unhittable. So I'd prefer just to stick him in and give him a run and see what you actually have there as an arm.
Yeah, I kind of think, he's had the injuries, that have just kind of held him back. But anytime there's been nothing like, anything like that going on, he's not been great necessarily, except for a couple little stretches. But, he's basically a, 4-5 FIP guy, who goes out there and gives you 6 innings and is inefficient and uses his pitches up too much. But, for a guy who's still only 24, I think, or maybe about to turn 25, like he's really been fine. But I agree with Chris that, they do seem to kind of feel like there's something in his mentality that needs a little bit more hardening. So, and Chris Bosio, I like as a pitching coach. I thought that was a really, really great hire. And so I'm now, even if I disagree with him, I'm now kind of stuck like, well, all right, whatever Chris Bosio says, I'm probably going to have to, grouchily accept. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I do agree, like putting him in AAA, I don't see the point of that. That seems kind of, foolish to me, but.
And the thing is, especially too with, you talk about the toughening mentality, you're responding to people on Twitter, whether you're a starter or not, to a local guy who does a pizza joint. I don't know. That does say something about yourself. So, but players do have the right to defend themselves on Twitter. I understand that. But when somebody's saying you're better in the bullpen and they respond relatively quickly, you kind of wonder what else is on his mind.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Freddie the Pizza Man. Yeah, Freddie the Pizza Man said you call him out and say, hey, you should be in the bullpen, and Daniel Norris responded. So
Well,
yeah,
it's
you know, when Justin Verlander does that, it's awesome because Justin Verlander's, great.
Verlander,
and,
yeah.
That's all.
well,
that
yeah,
is.
I mean, there are certain elements of that, like Trevor Bauer goes at people on Twitter a lot, and I don't like Trevor Bauer as a person, but I kind of like his attitude as a pitcher.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a big F you. I'm going to do whatever I want, and I'm going to be awesome, and you suck. And I want more of that from Norris. I don't see that level of intensity from Norris. It's more of like a sensitive intensity.
Yeah, it's like self-directed intensity rather
Yeah.
than like I'm going to go dominate these. Can we swear on this podcast? These motherfuckers.
Yeah,
How
go,
about
no,
that?
yeah,
absolutely.
I
yeah,
might have
absolutely.
to edit that, but
Yeah.
go for it.
There you go. That's fine.
I want that like Max Scherzer psychopathic stare.
Yeah.
I want that. I mean, it helps that Scherzer's got the heterochromia, but
By the way,
yeah, just something like that. And I don't know if they have to waterboard him or put him in the bullpen or what. But
take away his Volkswagen, van. But I think, Jed, correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Trevor Bauer have you blocked on Twitter?
Yeah, he's blocked me for a while.
he's like I said, there's just about everything about him personally I dislike, other than his mentality on the mound.
Super smart pitcher. Like, I really appreciate, the craft he has and the, the analytical thought that goes behind, like, the work he does in the off season. But yeah, he just seems like, really a severe douchebag. And I am blocked as well. So
You too, Brandon? Really? Would you? Well, I don't, maybe I don't know.
yeah, let's not go there.
All right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Chris, are you blocked from him too?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I've ever tweeted at him. I try not to tweet at players.
Yeah, me neither.
A couple years ago, I tweeted at Devin Travis during he was rooting for Syracuse back in the Final Four. Had 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you're going to be a Tiger, you're going to have to root for Michigan. And he was
boy.
like, my dad went to Syracuse, and I'm like, I'm an idiot.
All right, but let's look at the position battles right now. We're looking at the roster right now. It's not etched in stone. A lot of it is, but in terms of there's some position battles that I wanted to get to. Really, we can start with we've been talking a little bit about the bullpen, really, and so let's continue on and let's start with who's in and who's out of the bullpen. So, Brandon, I'll start with you in terms of who's been having a spring that stands out to you. I mean, we're looking at outside of Green, Wilson, Stump. Who else to you in this? Who else is kind of set for you the etched in stone in this bullpen?
Yeah, I think you got it locked with those three. I'm kind of notoriously down on Drew Verhagen just because I've kind of been saying for years, like his curveball is just garbage. It's hot garbage. And, he's been working on the slider for the past year, and he's kind of racked up a little bit of a high strikeout count by his, standards. Or really, he's had a nice spring, basically. And, and it just seems like everybody just loves Drew Verhagen in the Tiger system. The guy's going to get chance after chance. And he's also out of options, which is the other, key factor. So I'm pretty sure Drew Verhagen is going. And I wouldn't be surprised if Warwick Saupold wasn't going as well. And then you also have Buck Farmer, who they have said is now a reliever. And I would kind of expect Buck Farmer to be in there. So, right there, I think you've kind of got six. And then it's just a question of, Joe Jimenez, whatever they're going to do with Daniel Norris. And I think that's probably it. Eduardo Jimenez really impressed me this spring. He looked like he absolutely belonged already. And he, hasn't pitched at high A at all, I don't think yet. So he looked good. There've been some guys who were impressive. Sandy Baez looked great, but he's still, they are going to want to see if he can start and at least give him another year to work on that. So, yeah, I mean, Joe Jimenez has been good this spring, although he's had a couple outings where he was, hit hard early on, and he gave up a home run today, but those were the first runs he's allowed. So he's looked a little better to me than he did last year, obviously. So I think, they would like to get him in there, but because they can option him to Toledo, he's probably, kind of on the cut line as well. And that's going to play a lot of what's into it. Farmer has an option, but because they've moved him to the bullpen, I would expect that there's no point in them doing that if they're not going to take him north. So I think you've got at least six, and then there's kind of that, that last swing spot where you would think maybe they want a lefty, but I don't know if that's their thinking or not. And there's also Johnny Barbato, who's been effective, although he hasn't like the strikeouts haven't been great. He's walked a few too many guys, but they brought him over for a reason, and he gets a ton of ground balls, and so maybe you can put him in that mix as well.
And what about you, Chris? I mean, what have you seen so far? You know the guy too. I forgot John Schreiber had a good.
Oh yeah.
He had a really good job of just kind of blowing guys away. It was the first submariner we've seen in a while for the Tigers. In terms, more recently than I can remember outside of. Was it Clay Rappada?
Clay Rappada?
Yeah, Clay Rappada. Yeah, he was kind of a submariner.
Yeah, with Schreiber. I mean, generally, guys with weird arm angles it's hard to know if they're going to succeed until they do it. Yeah. So it was nice to see him get a couple outs, but I need to keep seeing him do that as he goes up the levels before I can say he's actually going to do it at the major league level. But yeah, I think Brandon pretty much nailed it. It seems to me, I think they'll have a lot of what they've done this offseason leads me to believe that they are looking for people to eat innings in any way they can, which was kind of the Laborde, getting rid of him because you can't trust him to go multiple innings or one inning. Yeah. And Liriano, if he had been in the bullpen, he could go on multiple innings. I think Farmer is going to be a lock because he's a guy who can go multiple innings, and he has that changeup that makes him effective against left-handers at times. I guess the last spot would be down to between Barbado and Chad Bell. I don't know. Is Chad Bell injured? I haven't seen him a little bit.
No, I think he's been all right, and he's had a pretty solid spring as well. So yeah, if you're looking at the lefty, you'd think it'd be him.
Blaine Hardy, what happened to him? Seems like a lot of guys haven't played recently.
Yeah, he's coming back from that shoulder impingement, okay. And I guess he's basically healthy again, but he's gonna have to ramp up, so he's probably not gonna be ready in time.
Start on the DL, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, or I don't even know if he has an option or not, honestly. So I'm not sure.
No, I mean, I like to see Bell back in AAA. I mean, I don't know. Chad Bell's had a decent spring, and perhaps that's why they let him keep him over Laborde as my dog decided to jump on the couch with me, apparently. So she is now sitting next to me right on the board. So no, I thought Mark Montgomery would come out a little bit, but it looks like he'll probably start the season in AAA. And Jed, what about you? Who in the bullpen has stood out to you? Who do you think is going to get the last spot?
I guess Blaine Hardy's not going to be back in time, is he? So I guess Reiniger's interested because he came up last season and he looked okay in maybe half the performances. He looked so like he could get out to that level, but I guess it won't really matter too much this year. I think this could be maybe the worst bullpen of all time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That is an interesting topic because I'm not sure it's that much worse than last year, though. But that's not saying anything at all because last year was awful too.
Because Alex Wilson was bad in the second half last year, so if he carries on like that, Green, you have to figure if he's good at all, he may be gone at the deadline.
Yeah,
and then after that, it's just minor league arms basically, and Jimenez, who. I guess it'll be good to see if he's actually going to be able to progress now. Or is he going to just be like the next Bruce Rondon where we're waiting, and then he's just always, crap.
Yeah,
but Verhagen looked good. He struck out, was it Sanchez, Stanton, and Judge? Yeah. And the next inning, he gave up the walk and the home run. So. Yeah. I think he's probably somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah, I wonder if he's comfortable throwing that slider against lefties yet. It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, and he never really had that much of a changeup, so...
Yeah. That's, I was just looking at the 2003 bullpen.
Yeah, I was looking at the same thing, Chris.
Good.
Yeah. The combination
Fernando Rodney was the best reliever with his 5 walks per 9 innings.
Oh, man. Jamie Walker was their actually, I was looking at this. It was Matt Rodney led all people.
Matt Rooney.
Matt Rooney.
Rooney?
Yeah, Rooney!
Rooney,
yeah, fantastic numbers of 100 innings with 47 strikeouts. That he led all the guys that technically were considered relievers. Let's not forget the Chris Sperling era of 77 innings and 38 strikeouts. 22 walks. Oh,
yeah. Well, In the mention, Jed mentioning Reiniger and Verhagen, it's sort of like we've seen glimpses from these guys. Verhagen for much longer, but it's like that's the thing. There are a lot of relievers who have arms and show us glimpses. It's the consistency, and with Reiniger will have a perfect inning one game and then not be able to locate his fastball at all the next, and it's super frustrating.
Yeah, but he is young.
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had Tommy John 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago. So, yeah, there is some similarities there, but Verhagen's, a couple years older, has had the thoracic outlet syndrome. I still have some interest in Reiniger as well. He jumped 3 levels last year, so you never know. You're right. Isn't Chris Bosio supposed to wave his magic wand and this guy finds his command and then we're good? So
sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right.
But it's
plus he's got long hair, so I have to root for him. There's also that.
No, I was gonna say he has the. I like the fact that we would have some sort of if in terms of adding intrigue to a season that's going to be essentially a bad one. Any intrigue is fine. Long hair, mustaches, whatever side story that could distract the public from what's going on in the ball club, that's fine by me. So that's what's going to happen. And so we move on to the position battles a little bit. We get up to what is going on in the outfield in terms of you've seen some things with Victor Reyes is a source of I remember Chris calling I think it was one of his swings was just like it looked like he was batting lefty, but it was like a righty or like just I forgot the comment you said about swing, but it was pretty funny. But
he'd look like a left-hander batting right-handed.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it was pretty funny. But you look at the lineup's pretty much set. The starting lineup looks like it's set. Machado's had a really good spring. I'm pretty excited about that because in order to hold down the second base position and just kind of really holding, Victor Martinez, 3 home runs. You can hang on to that. But Victor Reyes is where you kind of look at who's going to be. The bench is where you're going to see, like Jacoby Jones has had a good spring. But again, this is a guy who has a high strikeout rate and doesn't get really on base. So is it just because he's playing against AAA or, this is spring training numbers? And we look at guys throughout history who've had great spring training numbers. Michael Rivera with the Tigers, I can't remember what year it was, but had a really good spring as a catcher. Then you never heard from him after June. So I bring that as an example where Jacoby Jones still has the upside. He's been playing utility positions a little bit. But who's in on the bench? I'm going to start with Chris. Who's going to be in on the bench that's going to provide some sort of depth, if you will?
Well, we're assuming John Hicks is going to be the backup catcher.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah, and so if we're looking at the outfield, we got Castellanos, Matuk, and Leonis Martin, I assume, is going to be the center fielder because they signed him to a deal, right?
Yep. And leadoff man.
Yeah. So we're looking for what 2 more outfielders and an infielder, or maybe one of each. I don't know. I came into the spring training thinking that Ronnie Rodriguez would win a utility job because he could play all sorts of positions, but Nico Goodrum can as well, and he's outperformed him. So if they want to add a utility man, they can do that, or they could, like you mentioned, Jacoby Jones. They could start throwing him back at second and third and try him at shortstop just for the hell of it to have a super utility guy. But I don't know. Yeah, if it comes down to Reyes and Jones, it's kind of a strange choice because Jones has superior power. He's a better outfielder and he's faster, but he can't hit. And Reyes can hit a little bit, but he doesn't have power and he's not all that fast and he can't play center field very well. So it's like if you combine those 2 players, you got yourself something. But
I don't know. Wonder, do you think Victor Reyes would go right through waivers right now if they released him?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I've seen him a couple of times put together really good at bats. So you can see where and good at bats in that he waits until he gets a hit. He can foul off pitches until he gets a hit. He doesn't seem like the type who's going to work a walk. And even when he gets those hits, they're just sort of flares into the outfield. And that's only from the left side. So you see one thing that's kind of encouraging, but I haven't seen anything else from him to suggest that he needs to be on a major league roster this year. If they like him, they should, it doesn't matter if they keep him or not because the team's not going to be any good. So they might as well. But if they don't feel like they can justify keeping him on the roster, I'm sure they can work out a small deal with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you like him, just make a little deal. Keep him so that you can keep that flexibility. And if not, I guess you just kind of let him go for a month or two. We'd all if Jacoby Jones this is kind of almost like a Derek Hill situation. Like if Jacoby Jones could just make substantial and consistent contact, he'd be a super valuable player. So he's worth, I think, letting play at AAA and hopefully getting his legs under him. See if he can kind of build on a nice spring and actually sustain some of this plate discipline, because that's really the key thing. He's always going to have a lot of swing and miss, I would assume. I haven't seen any radical changes in his actual swing mechanics. So yeah, so if he could, if he's made a step there, that would be awesome. But I think you kind of let a guy like that with more upside kind of get some momentum going with the Mud Hens, and then if he's going good, Victor Reyes, is pretty much irrelevant. So yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I just think Jacoby Jones needs those at bats every day because he still has the upside that you want to try to get to, and forcing him into playing center field against lefties, and then maybe getting him 10, 15 games at second base, 10 games at short, 10 games at third. That's kind of you're kind of doing a guy's head in there when he's still young and trying to figure out how to hit, and that's all he really needs to be doing. So,
yeah.
What about you, Joe? Who do you like on the bench between between Goodrum, Armista, and Ronnie Rodriguez?
As long as it's not Amarista, then any of the three. But I was kind of hoping Mike Gerber would win the outfield, the fourth, fifth outfielder spot. But then I think he's been sent down purely because we have Reyes.
Yeah.
I think Gerber can do everything Reyes can do, if not better, to be honest. For at least from what we've seen in the spring. But I think Reyes will get a chance, and if he turns out terrible, I think they'll just cut him, and then they can always bring Jones if they do send him down, back up, or Gerber even. He's 26 now as well, Gerber, so it's kind of time to. I'd like to have seen what he could do. Now now it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I don't know why they. Mike Gerber needs his shot. It does feel like they're waiting way too long. In center field, he's looked reasonably impressive, and he's obviously got more power potential than Reyes does. So it's just the fact that he doesn't really fit with Martin. But yeah, I would like to see Gerber up as soon as possible. I don't know why you would keep him in the minor leagues much longer. The Tigers obviously really like him.
Yeah, I think the only reason is to get him, like you said with Jones, get him at bats every day.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, with Martin, and they're not going to have Martin and Gerber as a center field platoon. Or, if they cut Martin, maybe you could go Matuk and Gerber in center field. But he's. I think he could be maybe an average or fringe average center fielder, but I think he's probably better off in right field. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he seems like a perfect, kind of fourth outfielder for a team that tends to roster a lot of right-handed hitting corner outfielders who, aren't particularly good defensively. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, is I will say I've really enjoyed so far watching Mikey Matuk bat so far this spring. It seems like he's good to go, and talk about Candelario having really good spring. You guys mentioned it earlier. I forgot who mentioned Jose Iglesias, who's had a really good spring too. And again, it's just this is the reason why I hate spring training sometimes, because I just rather get to it, and I know why position wise, but this is all a battle. But I think Goodrum is gonna be the utility player, and you look at Ronnie Rodriguez going to spend some more time in AAA. I thought Rodriguez was going to come in and be gangbusters a little bit, but he's disappointed me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
He's just, you see it in the stats last year. He's just too aggressive. He swings at everything.
Yeah.
And when you hit it, that's good. But pitchers learn pretty quickly that they don't even have to throw you strikes, and that's a good sign that you're not a major leaguer.
It kind of feels like Goodrum is a maybe a better defender too. I don't know. Rodriguez has looked a bit uncomfortable at times, so yeah. Not real sure there, but neither of them has really stood out. So, you know what, Jose Iglesias, if everybody here could give Jose Iglesias one quick piece of advice, what would it be? Because mine would just be dude, swing for the fucking fences. Just let it rip at this point, because there's just really no point. He has no discipline. He's gonna swing it at everything. I would just be just hunt first pitch fastballs and just take the biggest rip you have in your, your tiny little frame. Like, I don't know what else to do because he's going to be a free agent and he's probably not going to get a starter's job anywhere in the league because he just has no power. And at this point, you can find that anywhere.
No, that's good. I like that because he has the bat control to basically he can get down 0-2 and probably foul off a half a dozen pitches.
Yeah, I want to see that big Austin Jackson leg kick, like the 2011 kick.
First two pitches you see, just swing the hell out of it. But
they can't strike out, so yeah.
I'll say honestly, I'm tired of the bunt singles. So yeah, go for power. I mean, go for broke. I mean, why not? I mean, if Martin or Martin gets on base, you're looking at a guy who could drive him over the third. Why not? I think that's Jose's game anyways. Towards the last part of the season, those little singles seemed to go down. He was trying to go for. He had a lot of deep fly balls that. I mean, he had some power towards the end of the season. But Joe, what about you? Do you want him to swing for the fences, or you want those? Do you like bunts?
That's a harsh truth.
See him be a bit more aggressive as well because he doesn't walk anyway. He never walks, so there's not much point in him, working the counter because he's never going to take the walk anyway. So you may as well just swing it out of his shoes at the first good pitch he sees, to be honest. And if it raises his value a bit, people were talking last week about how we should have traded him and stuff, but there's maybe only 3 teams with a worse shortstop than him anyway. So, like, offensively, so I don't think he'd even like a playoff contender's not going to want him for anything other than maybe a defensive replacement. So he may as well try and raise his value a little bit.
I think I might suggest to look into time travel. Go to the 80s. A franchise shortstop.
Be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he might be. Yeah, he could be Ozzie Smith. I got in a funny debate with someone about tagging ability the other day because it was some Cubs fan just going on and on about Javi Baez, and I was like, fuck all that. I was like, there's one video there's a defensive video of Jose on YouTube, and there's like 4 where he's like in the air, like snatches the ball to one side of his body and like reaches down. I mean, he's just a sick athlete that way, and it's just really hard to understand how a guy with that kind of hand-eye coordination can't recognize pitches at all. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's just baffling. Nick Castellanos is kind of the same way. It's like, how can this guy have such terrible hands and reaction time when he makes, as consistently solid contact as any hitter in the game? It's just weird. It's weird that they're 2 different things like that.
Yeah. It especially because I remember Derek Jeter talking about how he could see like the seams on a fastball come in at 98 miles an hour. And, then ironically, he's one of the worst defensive shortstops of all time. But, I could get a Derek Jeter blast in.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
He's the greatest. But, so we were looking at what's been going on in spring training, the limited times teams can gather on the mound. So that's been something that's implemented. But on Wednesday, minor league baseball announced a new pace of play rules that will implement in time for the new season. And these are Rob Manfield's things that he wants to get implemented. Mound visits, extra innings, and a pitch clock. Now, keep in mind the pitch clock's been around for a while in minor league baseball since I think it's like 2 or 3 seasons where you see that small clock. I've seen it in Toledo and I've also seen it at West Michigan. But yeah, Manfield's obsessed much, is improving the pace of play and would be in terms of what he's trying to do. Meanwhile, baseball just signed all these. Meanwhile, baseball as a whole has been getting TV contract money that's ridiculous to the point where teams can store it away. So apparently, I guess it's not that or baseball's not popular or anything. No, not at all. No. So how it's going to work is AAA teams will be permitted 6 mound visits per game, one additional for every extra inning. AA teams 8, single A 10, and single A 10, and then short season and rookie teams don't have to worry about that. So there's that rule also. This putting the runner at second, the extra innings. This is the one that I think Brandon was pretty pissed about. I think across the room here, everybody was pretty pissed off about. Which each team will receive an automatic base runner at second base to begin the half inning, starting with the 10th inning. So I'm not going to get into the full rules because you can Google it and find it yourself. But gentlemen, the pitch clock, which is 15 seconds to deliver the ball when nobody's on base, and 20 seconds to begin their delivery when somebody's on base. And the clock will start when the pitcher has the ball within the pitching circle, the catcher's in the catcher's box, and the batter's in the dirt circle around the plate. So I'll start with you, Brandon. What the hell?
I mean, of all the things that have come up, like the pitch clock is kind of the one that sort of bothers me the least. It just kind of, like, I think I said this on the show before, but it just feels like a passive aggressive solution for something that they already have a solution for and just won't enforce. It's already in the rules that I think it's 15 seconds, between pitches, once you're on the mound, and no one enforces it. So putting a giant clock out there so that the umpire can just, instead of having to do it himself, can just kind of like, give a sidelong glance to the clock, like, hey buddy, you better speed it up here. So I don't know, it just seems weird, but I don't really mind that. I just find the emphasis consistently being on the pitcher here, and it's not on the batter. And batters are the ones who, adjust every piece of equipment between every, swing that they take, and on and on. They're taking all day out there. And I just hope that, once I would make the rule right now that if the pitcher is standing on the rubber, he can pitch no matter what. Like if the hitter hasn't called timeout, it's his own goddamn fault if he's not ready. So I don't know. I would kind of go about it that way. And then as far as the guy on second base, like, I almost just want to write that off because it's just so nonsensical. Like, it's fine if that's like little league rules or whatever, or softball or something. But Major League Baseball, like if it ever comes to that actually might drive me to I don't even know what, because that's messed up. That's that's drastically screwing with the actual game itself. In a way that we probably haven't seen since like the designated hitter was instituted, which I've seen some people kind of referencing. And I just hate it. Like, the best response to this I thought was my cohort Ashley McLennan's article yesterday on our site, which she basically portrayed Rob Manfred as a random solution generator. Like if you ask him for beer prices at the stadiums are too high. Well, we're going to start a runner at second base in extra innings. Like the things, there's no, like the solutions he comes up with and, the issues that seem to be on his mind don't seem to me to really equate to any actual problems in the game. The problem with the game is that not enough young people are playing it. And so it's not as interesting to watch. Maybe that's why sometimes they get some responses that the game is too slow or whatever. And I don't have any problem with them trying to speed the game up a little bit, but don't mess with it by, the rule book could be so screwed up by starting a runner at second base in extra innings to where, you could allow a run in a perfect game situation. Like it's just, I don't know. And those things don't usually happen, but, they said the same thing when they were going to, when they took away the intentional walk, like where you just give the free pass, and they don't think about the things that affects, like the fact that they're normally when you're, putting an intentional walk, before last year, you've got a guy in the on deck circle who's, he's not getting to time the pitcher exactly, but he's kind of getting his reps in. But when a guy walks to the dish and you just, give him the thumb and send him down to first base, all of a sudden this other guy who's, just been getting the donuts off his bat and chalking it up and everything, suddenly walks, directly into the batter's box. And there's just weird things like that. And none of this seems to have any, that I can see, any utility as far as the game, the business of the game, the quality of the play of the game. I don't know. They're just very, very out of the blue solutions for problems that don't seem to exist so much to me, and don't actually even address the problems that they seem to assume exist. So I don't know. It's a mess. Rob Manfred is kind of a maniac as far as I can tell.
I feel like he hung out with his. This is exactly what happened. I feel like he hung out with his niece one weekend, and she complained the entire time. Why do you have to go to your work? Why do you have to go to your work, Uncle Rob? This sucks. Blah blah blah. Uncle Rob, baseball's boring. And that's exactly what happened. Like he was hanging out with his niece all weekend. Maybe his own kids. I don't know. But I feel like the way he's busy, he's so busy he doesn't have time for kids. But I digress. I don't know. But
let me just throw this in. I may be wrong about this, but I don't know of another sport or another like highly popular entertainment that has more of a complex about its status in the world than baseball does. Like baseball, for some reason, like the people who run baseball, like there's like they're just paranoid about them, about themselves. There's no confidence. It's all about what's wrong with the game, and that's all you hear addressed from the commissioner's office. You'd think they weren't baseball fans by the way they approach it. It's bizarre, and it's like very actively defensive just about everything that comes out of there as far as the rules go. I don't know. They just I don't know. There's some kind of lack of self-esteem. Their parents didn't love them enough. They sent them to boarding school when they were young, and then they were bullied. I'm really not sure. But yeah, there's something wrong.
Well, you, Chris.
Well, I'm actually a little bit bothered by the pitch clocks because I feel like that might lead to more injuries in the aggregate. There was one study where a guy looked. I don't think it's like nearly scientifically sound, but a guy looked at one of the leagues where they instituted the pitch clock. It looked at the number of trips to the disabled list the year before and the number of trips to the disabled list when they installed the pitch clock, and they went up with the pitch clock. And he looked at other leagues where they didn't have the pitch clock and they stayed the same. And it's a 1-year sample and probably not enough numbers, but it makes me wonder why you're doing this to guys who are supposed to be developing. I don't particularly like that. Yeah. The starting on second thing, I sort of saw this coming when they started it, I think, in the AFL, the Arizona Fall League, and then they instituted it in the rookie leagues last year. So I actually looked into it because I was curious, like, does this even save any time? And so I kept track of, I looked at it, I think the 2016 Gulf Coast League or Dominican Summer League team for the Tigers versus the 2017 team. And really, I mean, the thing about extra inning games where you're putting men on second, like there are only like a half dozen of those a year, maybe 10. So you're really not making that big of a deal. And I'm actually like, I'm fine with it because the minor league games don't matter. Like just get them over with. But at that point, why not just call it a tie? Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's true.
Who cares if they win or lose? Like, what you don't want, and I know they're trying to avoid those like ridiculous 16, 17 inning games. But when I was looking at this, one of the Gulf Coast League teams last year, with the new rules, the Tigers West, they played the Pirates, and it went to the 15th inning because nobody scored in the 10th or 11th, and then both teams scored a run in the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th before the Tigers finally scored 3 in the 15th.
Oh, that sounds like an awesome game to be at. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is Gulf Coast League, so they're playing at 10:30 in the morning in Florida in 85 degrees. It was a 5.5 hour game. And one of the other things that the first couple times I looked at this, basically there was no effect on, because most people say, okay, when you put a man on second, the team is just going to bunt him over to the third, and then the other team's going to intentionally walk 1 or 2 batters. It's like, why not just start at first and third or whatever? But when I first looked at it, there wasn't that much of a difference. The games were about 30 minutes shorter with this new way, and there wasn't that much of a difference. But with this one Gulf Coast League team last year, the games were actually 6 minutes longer than the year before, and there were 3 times as many sacrifice bunts and more intentional walks too. The only other thing that this might, if people really like scoring, this produces a lot more runs. Because wacky shit just happens all over the place. Even there's an attempt sack button, and then there's an error, and then suddenly there's 3 men on base, nobody out, and it's a 7-run inning.
But no pitcher is accountable for those runs either.
Yeah, no, funny. It's somebody compared it to overtime in college football, which is I sort of see the same thing. Just start at a place and try to score. But yeah, man, for me. I mean, these are your young guys. You're supposed to be developing them. They don't take planes from city to city. There's no hyperloop in the Texas League, so they could be playing 5-6 hour game, and then have to drive 8 hours in a bus and play at 10:30 the next morning because it's like the local elementary school field trip day. And it's like, just end the games after 9 innings. Who cares?
Yeah,
that's my take.
I don't get it. But what about you, Jed? I mean, in terms of, you're staying up late watching these games, so obviously time may be a factor. But are you a traditionalist, or are you kind of in the new school thought?
Well, I like staying up for them. I don't remember. Was it 2010 with the like 16 inning All-Star game? I remember. So I stayed up till about 7:30 in the morning to watch that. And if that was, that's more exciting to me. The tension builds throughout, who's going to win, what's going to happen, rather than just basically turns into who can bunt the runner, who can manufacture a runner after 11 innings. Kind of. But I've played in tournaments with in Europe with those rules enforced, and that was because the games were timed. So So you have to end it in a certain, because another team needs the field, so they've enforced the rules. And I think they had it in the WBC where, but that's because pitchers were on the pitch count, and they don't want teams to burn through the whole roster in like a 20-inning game, and then the tournament's done. But I don't really see the point of making, minor leaguers do it when the games don't matter. So just end it. Like, I don't see the point of it. And if it ever comes to the majors, it will be ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare. I can't ever imagine the union allowing that.
Yeah, I don't think it would ever go through. But at the pitch clock, I can understand it at the lower levels because, in theory, if everybody's working to that pitch clock since they first become pro, by the time they get to the majors, they should be working fast anyway, but just out of habit. So that could increase, everybody will just be a fast worker by the time, in 5 years' time when everyone's just gone through the minors of a pitch clock. So that could work that way. But I don't, people who've been pitching like in a certain rhythm for years, suddenly having to change that if it comes to the majors that could, change people's careers really. If they've been like, is it Baez for the Dodgers takes about 35 seconds between each pitch, but that's how he's always done it. So for him to suddenly have to take 15, that could change his entire career just because of his timing. Could throw his timing off, So it's a bit weird. I don't really know what the fascination is with shortening the games when, all of America will sit down and watch an NFL game for 5 hours when the ball's in play for 6 minutes.
No, it's so true. Yeah, I mean, it's so true, Jen. So especially. That's why the NFL's got a problem right now with Red Zone, because I watch Red Zone, watch football, because I don't have to sit there and watch 5.
Well, the commercials, yeah.
Yeah, 5 hours. And and commercials every time there's a first down, it seems like. But, the thing that Brandon brought up, and I thought was an interesting point, is, if you look at somebody like Nomar Garciaparra, with the way he had his, the way he, unshuffled and do the batting gloves and everything, and then you talk about Dustin Pedroia as a more current example of that. You look
Victor does that as well. Victor Martinez, he rubs the pine tar on the shirt and so before every pitch, but then it's the pitcher that's going to be, punished for that. It doesn't really, they haven't really thought it through, I don't think.
Right, and I'm not sure what I don't know what your hatred is, Jed, of Yankee and Red Sox games on ESPN, because the reason why it takes so long is because the batters. It seems like every Yankee or Red Sox has some sort of stupid batting stance or fouling off 100 pitches but it seems like those games. That's the only time I get ever mad, because every time I watch those two teams, I'm like, those games seem like they take forever. But that's the only time I get mad. But it's just, all jokes aside, I just think it's setting a dangerous precedent where you're also, I think in terms of starting a run, the one rule I hope will never, ever, ever happen is a runner starting at second base, because then really what you're doing is changing over 130 years or so of history in terms of stats, because imagine now you have a new stat that's going to happen. How does that affect WAR? How does it affect the total statistics of everything? How many times a runner on second base came home? And I don't know. I feel like that's going to would change too much. And baseball being as tradition rich as it is, I don't know. That rule of them all is the one that I think is the most ridiculous and flat out. I'll swear, fuck it, stupid, fucking stupid.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and the thing that, that stands out is that none of it is ever going to count, That's the really odd part. Like, if they move that to, Major League Baseball, the result of the game will count, but nothing that happens in that inning will count in the normal, in the normal fashion. And let me just say, like, to any of your listeners out there is no evidence that, game times or anything like that is having any effect on baseball viewership. Ratings are good. TV contracts are enormous, and they just keep going up. It's really hard to understand where they're getting the idea that there's a problem, because obviously advertisers don't hate the fact that games go on, a little bit longer than they used to. And baseball, in its very rule set, and from the juiced ball to the strike zone being called smaller than it actually is doing everything it can to promote offense. And offense takes time. It just does, Strikeouts don't take time. Offense does. So, guys pitching with runners on base, throwing over multiple times, getting their signals right with the catcher because they're worried about, sign stealing and all those kind of things. Like those are the times where baseball slows down, but they're also the times when there are runners on base and the intrigue level is at its highest. So none of this makes any sense. And people will always kind of appeal to authority, like, oh, Rob Manfred, Joe Torre, these guys must know what they're doing. Yeah, well, prove it, because I haven't heard a single explanation from the league that made any sense, that had any data behind it, that had any, coherent argument that you could follow through from problem to proposed solution. And it's just baffling. I know Rob Manfred must be an intelligent human being. He's, been a successful, labor lawyer, all these things, but I don't know. It's just really baffling to see where these strange urges to change the game are coming from. So I don't know.
I tell you, man, less
Screw
time.
You, Manfred, just stop messing with baseball, for God's sakes, you fucking knucklehead.
Less time with his kids. That's all it is. It's less time with his kids. He doesn't get these insane ideas that his kids are giving him. That's all it is. His kids are at home. They give him a little post-it note, and they're like, "Dad, this game's taking too long." It's all jokes aside, but
Yeah, baseball fans love weird crap happening, like, the bizarre 15-inning game that you stayed through the rain for, and went back and forth every inning. Like, that's kind of the thing that stands out about baseball as one of its most unique and, lovable, or maybe annoying to some people, traits. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm really at a loss just to know what the hell's going on with the league at this point.
Yeah, it's baffling, and I just think maybe it's just something that, look at the NBA trying to get into legalized gambling. Okay, that makes sense. The NFL's trying to maybe try to prevent less concussions, quote unquote. Depends on how you point of view on it. Okay, perhaps. Hockey, who knows what they're doing in hockey. But to make the game interesting, they're actually putting a team in Seattle, which makes sense. But baseball, yeah, I'm a little miffed by it. But last thing that the podcast really with is Chris has had a chance to really look at some of these draft potential Tigers drafts and who the Tigers are going to draft first overall. There's a couple names coming out there. There's the pitcher from Auburn who's been coming on, Mays, I believe. Mays is his name, correct?
Mize.
Casey Mize. Who else, Chris? There was a guy that we were talking about with Brandon and I at the international signing that sounded like he's 6'1", and he sounded like a diamond in the rough, possibly.
For the draft?
Or for the international signing. I'm sorry, the Tigers who the Tigers were linked to.
Oh, Jose De La Cruz, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Brandon, you did an article about that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's like, you just learned something yesterday, Chris. Like, don't mention anything to me, or there'll be an article tomorrow.
Right, that's fine.
Yeah,
I'm good with that. No,
that's no big deal. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot on him, but he's a center fielder with plus speed, plus arm. There's some pretty good video of him throwing from the outfield. And yeah, I mean, he's got power potential. He's a big kid to have that kind of speed, but he's also 16, so who the hell knows how it'll turn out. But yeah, he looked pretty good.
And in terms of
and I mean, these are guys that they're linked to the Tigers, which means they probably already have a deal in place, but we won't see that deal announced until July 2nd, and we won't see them play until next year, probably in the Dominican Summer League. So it's like these guys are like 6-8 years away.
Yeah, this is all about priming the pump for 2023 when we trade Jose De La Cruz for that final piece on our glorious World Series championship.
Exactly.
But in terms of anybody out there, there's the reason why I wanted to bring up the players that the Tigers were drafting too is because we're right now starting in the middle of college. Baseball's on its way, and you get a chance to look at some right-handers out there. It seems like that's what everybody's predicting the Tigers to do, but was there anybody recently, Chris, that has come on your radar?
Well, I think for the most part, the big names are all still pretty much up there. Like the top 10 players are kind of shuffling around a little bit. But, Mize was always a guy who was considered a top 10 pitcher, and he's gone out and performed really well. He had a no-hitter last week, which is why he's getting some shine. But, it's Shane McClanahan's the left-handed pitcher. He's probably got the best stuff of any college pitcher in the draft. He's from South Florida, and so he hasn't given up a run yet this year in like 4 starts. But I don't know. It's kind of a down year for college bats. It seems like it's always a down year for college bats. But there's some decent college pitching, and there's a ton of high school pitching. We've said before that the top high school pitcher, Ethan Hankins, went down with a shoulder injury. So he's kind of on the shelf for a little while. So his draft stock is just kind of up in the air. But that lefty from Arizona, Matthew Liberatore, has looked really good. And there's a kid named Carter Stewart from Florida who looks really interesting, and Mason Dinneberg. There are just tons of arms out there. Usually those guys will fall a little bit as the draft comes. Teams get a little skittish, and they go for safer bets in college. And the one guy, when I did my thing like a month ago about looking at what positions were best, it came up with college third baseman, and the one guy who seemed like an option is Alec Boehm from Wichita State, which we know is one of the Tigers' favorite stomping grounds.
Yeah.
And he's had a pretty good year so far. He's hitting for power. He's more walks than strikeouts. I still don't think he's a real option at the first overall pick. But who knows? Maybe if they can get him for like $4 million and save $4 million and spend it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting, possibilities is whether or not they can, Casey Mize has had some, forearm injuries in the past, or not even injuries, but like soreness and, the kind of signs that worry you a little bit. So you never know if maybe they can take somebody a little bit and get them to sign under slot and then go after someone in the second round. But yeah, everybody I like has been hurt. Nick Madrigal, second baseman, the college Jose Altuve, he's got shoulder issue going on, and Hankins had the shoulder thing and hasn't come back yet. Liberatore is healthy, I guess. And then there's Nolan Gorman. What do you got on Gorman at this point? He looks like he's been doing real well. So
yeah, he's some people think he might have the most power of any hitter in the entire draft. He's he's about 6'1", 210, third baseman. It's questionable if he can stick at third base. They'll give him a chance, but it's the sort of bat where it might not matter. You're talking like maybe 70 power, and he can hit a little bit too. They think maybe a 50, 55 hitter. So
Joey Gallo part 2.
Yeah, he doesn't quite have Gallo power, but I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, if you do.
Yeah, he's one of those. There are like a handful of guys that I would be just fine with them taking. You mentioned Madrigal. I right before he got hurt, I was like, you know what? I want them to take that guy and sign him for like $5 million or $6 million or whatever.
Yep, me too.
A little bit less, and save that money and go after like a high school, a higher upside, more risk high school player with their second pick. Because to me, Madrigal, so he's undersized, and it's like what 5'7", 165. It's not like an Altuve fire hydrant undersized. It's more like a
Pedroia size.
Yeah, like a cashier at a grocery store size. And but he's got like 70 grade speed. He's probably the best pure hitter in the draft. He could be a shortstop. What's that?
Oh, I was just going to say, really good defense. Yep.
Yeah, his arm is a little light for shortstop, but if you could somehow tease a little bit more out there, he could play there. But he would probably be a very good second baseman. So to me, he probably just has the highest floor of anybody in the draft. Like I thought maybe his floor would be like Joe Panic, but with more steals, which doesn't sound sexy, but that's like a 3 to 4 win player.
Yeah,
and
you got to hit on that number one pick. Especially because the last few years, the Tigers have made quite a few fairly risky picks. I mean, Manning and Burrows and Hill are all prep players who we still don't have really a good line on what those guys might be. Burrows is doing real well, but yeah, I mean, Madrigal made a lot of sense to me, and as long as that doesn't look like it's going to be anything, Jurickson Profar type disability. Yeah, I would kind of lean that way too, and then see if maybe you can steal. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can steal a Hankins in the second round because he's got to know he's too hot. But there must be someone you could take in the second round and overpay out of high school, grab him.
Yeah, there are always high school pitchers who pop up like hey, suddenly this guy's hitting 98. Like, all right, we'll take a look. I think, and like you said, Madrigal, he's got such a long track record of hitting that his injury doesn't bother me at all. Doesn't have a track record of being injured, so I don't know. But we'll see.
It just seems to be like a total
Tiger
gamer
kind of player.
I know he doesn't. It's super frustrating because the Tigers type of player typically falls on his face. So
yeah, he's a gamer. He seems like there's questions about his power, but he's one of those guys where like if there's power in there, he seems like the guy who's going to figure out a way to get to it.
Yeah, and I just love a guy who makes a ton of contact and draws walks. Like if you could put together a team of those guys, even if they're all 15 home run a year guys, you put that team in Comerica Park, they're just going to stripe doubles and triples all over the place out there and drive teams insane, and drive pitchers insane. So, yeah, I mean, if you can get yourself a middle infielder, that would be huge. If you get yourself a middle infielder of the future, then the way I look at it is that, there are no guarantees, but you look at it and you feel like, okay, we should be set at catcher. We've got Candelario at third. That probably seems like likely to work out to a decent degree. You got Miggy at first. There's nothing you can do about that. Corner outfield, I don't care about. And then, you hope Hill or Cameron can get it done in center field. And then, you're really looking to find a power hitting shortstop, which is, not an easy thing to find, but that's a spot where you're like, hey, I'll spend the money. Like if we got to spend money on Manny Machado and put up with, average defense or slightly below at shortstop to have the bat, that's a pretty well-rounded roster right there. So yeah, I'm leaning Madrigal as well. I'm just hoping he can kind of come back and do some things before the season ends.
A guy. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the guys we've talked about a lot, Nander DeSatis.
Yeah,
you mentioned a power hitting shortstop. He had a kind of a down start to the year, but he just went to a perfect game showcase and won the MVP. And it sounded like he was slimmed down a little bit. He was showing above average run times. He looked good on defense, and he hit a home run and a double. So, this is a guy that we've talked about before, switch hitter with power who could stick at shortstop possibly. That's
he's the guy I would like
one
to take in the second round and overpay. Yeah,
well, that would be amazing.
I don't want to see him do too well right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
A guy
thinking about college, show him some of those, some of those pictures of campuses in Florida with all kinds of beautiful blonde young women running around and stuff.
There's a guy too that, in terms of shortstop, who kind of falls just behind the Gorman and those guys in terms of infielders, and a guy who could potentially fall in the third round. I know Perfect Game's got a better rating for him than Baseball America. And before we end the podcast too, is Kendall Logan Simmons, 6'3", shortstop, 190. He's been punishing the ball pretty well. I saw a couple reports about him too. He seems like a guy who could go to third or fourth round, and the Tigers can fall to. I mean, this guy seems like he has a position to play shortstop. I don't know what you guys think of him, or you guys have heard of him, but I don't know. I like him in the third round or fourth round, possibly, if he falls that low.
As I recall, I think he was in one of, if not both of the showcase games this summer, and I think they had him playing third base with with 6'3", and what do you say, 190? I think.
Yeah, correct.
You're thinking a guy like that's probably going to end up at third base. But I don't remember a whole lot from him from that game, other than I think he maybe airmailed a throw, but that's sort of what happens at showcase circuits.
Got to show that arm off.
But yeah, I could totally see someone like that. Somebody they like, who's got physical projection and tools. Pop them in the second round or third. If they've got money this year, they need to be smart with it.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll end the podcast, Jeb. I know we've got a little quiet there, so I apologize. But I wanted to ask you.
There's no coverage of college baseball or anything over here, so I am happy to sit that one out.
Okay, I was just gonna say I was gonna ask how in terms of how prospects. I know there's a couple UK Tigers baseball podcasts are coming out there. Bat Flips, I think it's Bat Flips. That's a good one too. But how's the prospect coverage out there? What is baseball coverage in terms of? I know that they're doing a better job of marketing it out there, but what is it like to get prospect news? And I mean, I'm asking that question not because I'm trying to sound like I know the internet's out there and what have you, and yada yada yada. But in terms of how baseball's covered over there, and how it's viewed so far, it seems like it's progressing very well.
Well, it is and it isn't. MLB are trying to bring games out here. I think 2019, but they set up a huge kind of social media campaign in the middle of last season to try and drum up interest, and it didn't really lead anywhere. And now they've not posted for about 6 months. There's no regular TV coverage at all. You have to have a BT Sport package, which, I'd say the average household doesn't have it. So the likelihood people when I stumbled across it in 2006, it was on a regular TV. Once a week on a Wednesday, and then a Sunday, twice a week, Wednesday and Sunday, they'd just put a random game on, and two British guys would talk it over in the breaks and stuff, so to help fans learn the game. That's gone, and now they just show sort of at ESPN whatever games, Sunday Night Baseball. They'll show that on a pay-per-view like channel. So the chances of anyone stumbling across it now is slim. There's a sort of community that play. I play for my local team, and there's a community of people that play and follow. But it is mostly, you have to have MLB TV really, and you have to all the information you want. You have to search yourself online. So yeah, there's basically no coverage of it at all.
That's interesting. What position do you play?
I pitch.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. See, I wish, the weird thing about baseball over here is that once you're, 25, there's really nowhere to play baseball anymore. Like, you can play softball, and I really don't like softball. I would love to have a hardball league, and you just can't get anyone to play for some reason. I don't know, scared of injury or whatever. And I'm in my 40s now, so I don't really need to be playing baseball too much anymore either. But yeah, but I would love to get up on the mound and pitch again for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's your best pitch, Jed? Do you have a cutter? You got a sinker? What's your secondary pitches?
I throw knuckleball.
Oh wow,
yeah,
nice. Yeah, so I throw fastball, slide, and knuckleball pretty much.
Oh damn.
Nice.
I gotta get a strikeout ratio.
Unusual mix.
Yeah, so the standard I'd say is probably like less than like the youngest level of high school baseball. It's just above American Little League, probably. No, not even. The Little League teams would beat our best teams.
Oh, I could play there.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
We have
take a trip.
Yeah, we have a lot of American guys who are over on the army bases in the league, and they and a few Latin guys who are just over here living, and they are the best players in the league every year.
Yeah,
it's just like
ringers.
Yeah, well, it's just like my brother and I went to Spain in '95, and we were playing baseball. Like we were playing in the park, and my brother and I were playing catch. We brought our mitts over, and people were kind of looking at us all weird. They're like, "You guys playing baseball?" We're like, "Yeah." So like, you want to get a game together? I'm like, "Sure." So they had like this faded bat that I had no name. It was a no-name bat. I'll never forget it. My brother was a far superior baseball player than me. I will freely admit that. And this is my brother's all of 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, he was 12 at the time. Yeah, and my brother, because it was sidearm, and no kid tried. Like every Spanish kid tried to swing, couldn't get it at all. And then the kid's like, well, one of you guys has to be on our team. I'm like, fine. So my brother and I were the only ones like just wailing the ball, just like, my brother's making all these athletic plays, and kids were like, screw it, we're just gonna play soccer, and just left us in the park by ourselves. And so yeah, that's my European baseball story. But nevertheless,
I could tell my playing football or soccer against a bunch of English guys, and just literally like wanting to just kind of sit down after like 10 minutes and just like these guys are just like random guys who work jobs and are in their early 30s, and I was just blown away. Like I was like, I do not belong out here, just tripping over my own feet.
But we have some questions. I wanted to end the podcast. We have some questions, right, Chris?
I thought so. I mean, what did? There was one. I remember one about assuming the Tigers trade Shane Green, who becomes the closer at that point.
Daniel Norris.
Yeah, well,
probably.
I mean, yeah, if they keep him in the bullpen, he would be the best option probably. I could see Gardenhire going to Alex Wilson though.
Yeah.
But and really, closers are a luxury for bad teams. They don't. It's nice to have a good one, I guess. But I feel the same way in fantasy sports.
It'd be fun to put Gardy in a situation where he doesn't have a closer, like, and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah, let's see.
Obviously,
yeah, I mean that's
Jimenez. Obviously, if he's going well, I guess you just throw him in there and see how it goes. But I don't know if they do that.
It feels like all the gains that Austin's made in the last year and a half or so about using his best relievers at the most important times, just all washed away. It's going to be a closer and a setup man. That's the way it is.
Yeah, it feels like 2011 right now all over again in the Tigers organization. But we do have Chris Fazio,
that's true. Yeah, I guess he's in charge of all that stuff.
And watching those two kind of clash already a little bit has kind of got me primed to kind of watch for that all year. Because Chris Fazio has pretty progressive ideas about pitching, and very active ideas. Like he's got his his paws on everybody. He's changing people's delivery. He's changing pitch grips. He's changing attitude. He wants everyone to get up there and throw it within 10 seconds and just be a gunslinger and pitch inside and all this kind of stuff, and be flexible about the roles and all that. And that's anathema to a guy like Ron Gardenhire. So it'll be interesting to see if he just kind of lets Bosio run the pitching staff entirely and just kind of keeps his to the position side. I don't know.
It's interesting to me. They kind of look alike.
I know they do. All these guys
them,
could end up in Sturgis at a biker rally, in the summer.
You see them standing next to each other, and it's like that Spider-Man pointing meme.
I think we. All right. I know we had a request. I know. Okay, so we answered Mark's question of how Jed got in baseball, and also we want to know. I didn't want to ask the second question. I think it's kind of ridiculous, but the bad food thing. Which when I was in England last summer, I can safely say that London was fine. I had a lot of good food. It was, in England, so. I think that's a stupid stereotype. Well, I don't know if that's a stereotype, if you will, but nevertheless, I disagree about the food part. But was there any? I think we had one more. Do we have another question, or am I just imagining that?
I'm looking. I don't.
We had a comment about the Tigers. We had a comment about the Tigers' anemic offense, which
fires.
Yeah, fires sucking. So
it was Cabrera home runs, wasn't it? Someone.
Oh yes. Thank you, Jed. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Is Cabrera going to get his power stroke back? And I actually, you know what? I think he's going to play with a man. I think he's going to be a man possessed. I mean, is it going to make a? I think he's going to just for the simple fact what he said earlier in the press today that he doesn't give a flipping fuck what people think how he was playing hurt. And Mark, Brandon, all three of us have talked about this before, and I think Jed's talked about this too. He looks like he has played hurt, and he put up those kind of numbers with just simple hand and eye coordination. It's quite impressive. But he's fully healthy. I'm convinced that despite the Tigers' lack of in terms of offensive struggles, I think he's going to play with like a man possessed, which could help for trade value. But again, contract aside, we'll see.
Yeah, I just can't. Yeah, I just don't even know what it would take to get anybody interested in taking that contract. I mean, he had a pair of herniated discs, which is basically like inflammation and swelling. So it's not like he tore something or, had to have like, vertebrae fused or something like that. So I'm gonna try to have a little bit of faith that he's gonna be healthier this year. Obviously, he had all kinds of personal issues with the ladies in his life. That stuff will weigh on you as well. And then you've also got a team that stumbled and fell on its face by June, and you kind of knew the end of the era was coming. When even Ian Kinsler admits he couldn't really bring himself to give his best, I'm going to assume that everybody else felt similarly. So I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to predict for Miguel. We were talking about this the other day because it's like, where do you, in fantasy drafts, like where do you take him? And I'm kind of looking at him as like a guy I hope to get in the 5th round or 6th round, because I think he is going to come back and, and be more like a 25, 30 home run guy and probably high average and on an OBP again. It's just whether or not he can get that leg drive back and put the ball in the air enough. If he does, I mean, Miguel Cabrera is obviously still strong enough to hit 40 plus home runs, especially with the ball flying the way it is. But that's what we saw last year, is he just wasn't able to drive the ball in the air the same way, or take pitches that were, kind of above his knees and do anything other than kind of roll over on him. So, yeah, I don't know. We're just going to have to see how it goes. But it's Miguel Cabrera. Like I need 2 seasons of it all going to hell before I'm going to be convinced, probably.
Not. Chris,
it's mildly concerning that he doesn't have a home run in spring training yet, but it's spring training. But then you look at like V-Mart's got 4. I'm like,
yeah, it's like, do I take that seriously? Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I sort of feel like, with a great player like Cabrera, you saw it a little bit starting even in 2016, where his like stretches of being absolutely dominant as a hitter grew a little bit shorter. It would be, there were, a couple years there, it was the entire season, or it would be a month at a time. And I don't know, I just feel like we're going to see a little bit of that this year. We might see him put like go on a 3-week stretch of looking like vintage Cabrera, and then just kind of scuffling again for a month. But yeah, I still think it's hard for me to not envision him being like a 300 hitter with 25 homers.
Yeah, I think he's, like I said, I think it's just, if it's one of those things that if he could come out usually struggles in May. It seems like April and May struggles, and then it gets a little warmer. But Jed, final thought about this. What, you think he's going to come back to normal a little bit?
I think, I don't know, if he was, I've always thought if he was to sacrifice average and stuff and just try and put the ball in the air, he could easily hit 40, 50 home runs a year regardless, but he would obviously have a worse overall season. But the RBIs, if the lineup that we're seeing in spring is the way they're going to go, the RBIs aren't really going to be there. With two guys, be lucky to get on base at 300 clips. So I don't know, but the power, if he's healthy, the power should return if he is actually healthy. But I'd say he could hit 30, I think.
All right, I'm gonna go with 30. We'll leave it at that. We're out of time. Thank you so much for listening to Tigers SRD here on SportsRadioDetroit.com. Don't forget to check out all our great content. We have the Detroit female personality contest going on right now. Voting ends for the first round next Thursday at midnight. So vote. I've IP tracker, so therefore you can only vote once, and there's no rigging, no possible. Last year there's people cheating, apparently trying to cheat to get their person to win. So that's not going to happen this year, not on my watch. And so also wanted to promote.
Shout out to Kelly Rowe. Hey, girl.
Yeah, Kelly Rowe is destroying it right now. So she took that retweet, and a website crashed a couple times today. So, but apparently people on my own staff don't care about the referral part of it. But whatever, it's cool. Also wanted to plug us. Chris, Ben Salagi, and I are going to be at Sinbad's on opening day. We'll be broadcasting live thanks to our partnership with Detroit Sports Media. So if you want to come talk baseball with us, Chris, Ben, and I will be having cool headsets. So you can come by and come say hi. We'll be there opening day, and I'll be actually covering the game for Detroit Sports Media. So I'll be going to the press box for the first time in a while. So I'm pretty stoked for that.
Is Chris going to the game? Chris, are you going to the game or just like hanging out?
I don't know. Am I going to the game?
Yeah, I'm working on that. That's the part I'm working on right now. So,
because I'll come down for this. I mean, it sounds fun and everything. I mean, I'm up for it. I just don't think I can get tickets to opening day at this point. I don't know. Maybe I can. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Come on down, Brandon. I mean, you can jump on for sure. We have a fourth mic available. So,
get some hush puppies.
Get some hush puppies. Oh. Yeah, they got some really. Sinbad's has some really good cuisine. So it's right off by the tree. I believe it's St. Clair Street. So more details to come on the website, sportsradiodetroit.com. Jed, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it, and hope to have you back on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I'm impressed by your fandom for the links that you go to be a fan. It's pretty awesome. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's not easy. I know. I guess it helps a little bit when you work when you kind of work night shift a little bit. But yeah, it's tough just following the sport. On my end and having a job and trying to watch, the Astros because Verlander's there now too. It's like, I'm exhausted. It's too much.
This is the first year that we've been bad since I've been following. So, been optionally bad. So this will be a hard one, I think, to keep staying up late.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. I think the hits will come on. The hits will keep on coming. So, if Ron Gardner is going to make it interesting, to say the least. So, we'll be back next week.